Hi everybody, this is Barry with another video for the Breck After School Music Program online. Today's video is going to be for the music production segment of our channel, but it really applies to anybody who's generating new music. Anything that you're trying to create sort of from scratch, or if you're just trying to make a new song as opposed to a cover or, but it can apply to any new piece of music that you're making. Okay, and the idea is that we're trying to make music that sounds like you mean it. That's really the essence here. And I have some philosophies about that. You don't have to agree with me. I have some ideas. I think everything is valid. So, this is just something that you can try. All right. So my idea is to build a track from an idea. Okay. What that means is that you want to start with something that comes from your imagination. If you want to make a track that sounds like nobody else's track and that sounds like something that you meant to do, rather than sort of having to use loops and samples to approximate how you want the track to be, which all of those, again, production tools are very useful, but if you want the track overall to sound intentional, like you meant it, and like it really is yours and comes from you, and to get your message across, it's best if you infuse your message and your intentionality in it, and these are some ways that you can do it, okay? So I said try to imagine a great song or a track that you've never heard before. Now, excuse me, I'm going to look at some notes here because I really articulated some of these things the way that I wanted to, and I want to make sure that I cover everything, okay? So, imagine a track you've never heard before. If you have lyrics, you may have an idea of how you want the song to sound, and you may not. So, you might have the whole song in your head. If that's the case, then see if you can pick an element of that and build off that. And if you don't have any idea for the music, then then you may want to start with finding a vocal melody or something like that, or just start with some rhythm and sort of get a feel for what the style of the song is. There's lots of ways to go about this. Like I said, there's no right and wrong. These are just some suggestions, okay? I said if you do not or want lyrics in the song, you may have a melody or a rhythmic idea. So like I said, or I didn't say this yet, I said it in the last take that I tried to do of this video. If you can tap out a rhythm on your lap, or if you can beatbox it, or if you have some kind of musical idea that you can sing, even if it's the root notes of a chord progression. You can't really sing chords necessarily, but anything that you can sort of make without your gear, just with the tools of your body and your voice, is a great place to start, because that means that it's an intention, it's a part that came from your imagination, purely from you. All right. If there's a part in the song in your mind that you can sing, tap out, or beatbox, let's start there. That's what I said. All right. Imagine that part and try to determine what instrument sound or sample sound would best represent the sound in your imaginary part. So you may have a melody, and you may hear that melody on a violin in your mind, or you may hear it on a flute, or you may hear a singer singing it, but maybe it's nice to lay it down on some instrument, on a piano or something like that, just as an anchor. We want some place to start to build the track. Sometimes we put down the first things that we want to do in a track, sort of articulate the musical idea, and then we end up not even using the original thing that we put down. Or we end up using that piece of that motif, that musical melody or little piece, phrase, on a different instrument or somewhere else in the song or something like that. So, again, there are lots of ways that this can unfold. All right. So, selecting a sound. Now here's a cautionary tale. All right, I said here's where it's easy to get lost or distracted, which is not always good. It's not always bad. In fact, there's magic sometimes in the machine, but that's not what we're talking about right now. All right, so we're going to avoid that for now. I said we're going to try to stick to finding the sound we want, knowing that once the part is recorded on a MIDI track, the patch can always be switched. So even if we choose to use, like I said, a different instrument or different sound on this is the idea is, the intention here is to put the idea down so that you have something to work around. You can also ultimately copy that MIDI information, that track, onto another different sound, another different instrument. You can double it. There are all kinds of ways you can do it. So again, we're not married to anything here. This is process we're talking about. Okay, our first goal is to create a part as close to the one in your mind as possible. Then, while listening back to the first part, or just playing it back in your mind, try to imagine another part that complements that. You may start with a beat, which will somewhat anchor the track in a style or genre, but not necessarily. And you might want to add a bass part to complement or contrast that. All right. Maybe the first part is a bass line that suggests a style or a feel which can be brought into focus with a beat. Maybe your first part is a melodic motif which calls for a particular chord progression. It can go many different ways, like I said. Something to keep in mind as we add layers is to leave space. Okay, it's very easy to start just adding layers and adding layers, and soon nothing really has space. You don't hear any of the parts anymore. You sort of hear like this wash of a bunch of different things going on. One thing that I try to do when I'm mixing a recording that I've made is make sure that everything that's happening is heard, is essential, that it has its place sonically in the mix. But as you're making the track itself, as you're tracking, you can think about like, oh, is this occupying this whole frequency range, the whole bottom range of the frequency, and do I want it to do that? Do I want to leave room for something else to happen here? Am I working with a singer who has a high voice? Do I want to leave some space in the high register for a vocalist to go in there, or in the mid range for a rapper? So you really want to frame whatever vocal you're using, or whatever lead instrument, if there's a lead instrument. Again, many things to think about. Okay, so it's important to leave space, whether it be silence or sonic space. If one part takes up too much of the energy of the track, it may overshadow or obscure other parts and cause the track to sound muddy, chaotic, or directionless. Parts can also come in and out to make the track move, like when the beat drops out for a beat, or for a bar, or for a whole section. All right, so it's much more dramatic when it comes back in. All right. Not filling up too much space at once also allows parts to interact clearly and dramatically. Some of the best parts of great songs are where complete silence is used to create contrast and really draw your ear in, draw the listener in. So you're like, wait, what? I forgot I was listening to the song. All of a sudden, there's no song, and then they got you. And then they come in. Sometimes it can come in really sweet and gentle from that, and sometimes it can come in really hard and aggressive, and either of those things can be very emotional and impactful. All right. As the song progresses, take listening breaks. Okay? Periodically, you want to step away from the song, or you want to go listen on a different source. Listen on, email it to yourself. Listen on your phone. Listen on your headphones. Listen on, somebody else's, Bluetooth if you can. Or in a different room. Even if you just play it in one room and you go in the other room, sometimes it's going to sound, you're going to notice things differently. Okay? Especially, like I said, if you take a break from it, because sometimes we get too, we lose perspective. We get too lost in the sauce. We're paying attention to one thing and we're totally losing consciousnness of another part of the song that's not doing what it needs to do. Okay? Yeah, and then also you want to pay attention to the story the song is telling when you're listening. I said, try to imagine what the next part of the story might be. Listen as though you are not the person making the track. That's very, very important. Imagine, imagine you're in a setting where your song is playing and people are feeling it. And you imagine what it would be like for people to be enjoying your song. What would happen next in the song? Does it continue on an established theme? Do we want to just kind of sort of groove out there in one place for a little bit? Maybe it wants to go somewhere different, but keep a similar vibe. So it's not like jarring, but it just takes you on a little journey. Maybe it wants to shift gears completely and surprise the listener in a way that makes them want to hear more. Sometimes, when we're expressing strong emotions, a dynamic shift from loud to soft or soft to loud might be just the right thing. Okay? All of these things contribute to the story or the narrative of the track. I don't mean the literal narrative. I don't mean the words. I don't mean the thing that the song is about per se. I mean, or the lyrics. If it's a song with words, but the arc of the listener's experience. Okay, so the sort of journey that the song takes you on throughout the song, which should keep the listener's attention. When lyrics are added, that adds another level to pay attention to when considering how to make the track feel. So every element that we add to a track, we want to add that, like I said, we want to leave space for the lyrics, and we want to sort of do everything that we can to enhance the experience of the listeners listening to the lyrics, to the singer, to whatever the featured performances at any given point. Okay, it could be a guitar solo, it could be a beat breakdown, right? Whatever's featured, we want to make sure that that's getting properly featured, and everybody can really pay attention to that. Okay, so let's see. I said it's entirely possible to make tracks exclusively from loops and samples. It is, and it may be easier to start this way. And I recommend doing that, if especially if that's sort of the kind of sound that you're going for. It's great. I said this method is to help you add intentionality to your music. Like all my lessons, this is to reinforce the goal of making exactly the music you want to. Many tracks will be a combination of pre-existing loops or samples and originally generated ideas. Both are useful, and happy accidents are sometimes just what you need to hear the track in a new light. You know, sometimes something happens, you press the wrong button, or accidentally delete something, or cut something in half, or play like just half a bar of a loop, and you find something in the song that you didn't find before. So you want to leave space for that. Those are wonderful experiences. However, okay, the idea I'm presenting here is that the more you listen to what your imagination hears, the more you will be directed to seek the parts that make the music you really are trying to make, which is a unique expression of you. So it'll take some practice to be able to articulate just what you're hearing, but over time you will likely find your tracks to sound more intentional and engaging to your audience if you follow this process. The idea is that you're trying to hit a mark. You're trying to have an audience feel what you were experiencing when you made the track or what you were trying to say. So the way to do that is to really own that and to really just take the extra steps and make sure that some of the parts in the song are things that came from you so that the song sounds like you really mean it. All right, thanks. I'm going to do some examples best I can. We're going to do this on the fly next time, so hopefully we'll come up with some cool stuff. I'm going to try to make a track from a beat, from a rhythmic idea, and build it sort of up from the ground. I'm going to explain how I like to build tracks like a house, from the foundation up. And then I'll do another one where I start with either a lyrical melody or just a melody on an instrument and try to sort of build the opposite way, build it down and see what we come up with. All right, I'm looking forward to doing that with you, and I hope everybody's staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.